Hello and good evening. I'm Melissa Idris.
And I'm Sharad Kutun.
You're watching Consider This. According to a recent article by Khazanah Research Institute titled Digitalization of Firms, Challenges in the Digital Economy, I'm going to quote this report. It said that despite being the backbone of Malaysia's business environment, SMEs perform relatively poorly in digitalization. There exists a digital divide among businesses in Malaysia. Joining us on the show tonight to discuss how we can close this digital divide, we have the good folks from the Machinery and Equipment Productivity Nexus of the Malaysia Productivity Corporation. And welcome to the show, Tiong Kee Hock. He's the president of Malaysia Automation Technology Malaysia, or MATA, and Yong Kee Sin. He's advisor to the Machinery and Engineering Industries Federation. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show. It's good to have you. Now, how far do you agree with this statement that there seems to be a digital divide in terms of digital adoption for businesses in Malaysia, particularly SMEs? And talk to me through the lens of the work that you do through the Machinery and Equipment Productivity Nexus. I'm going to throw the first question to you, Tiong.
I think if you look at when Malaysia launched this national policy on Industry 4.0 in 2018, I think there has been a lot of awareness given, to especially the SME. I think they have a lot of seminars being thrown around, and people talk a lot about this Industry 4. And also I think there's a lot of activities being mentioned about this readiness assessment. A lot of SME are actually beginning to be aware of this, and of course they have also submitted the application to online. But yet you see that actually there are many that take up. I mean, for companies who actually go forward, I think there's still a gap, I would say, between understanding awareness and the actual implementation.
Right.
This gap actually came about, I think it can be seen from a survey by McKinsey for Singapore in 2018 as well. They did a survey and found that 75% of the respondents know that, yes, Industry 4 is good for them. Digital transformation is good for the business, is going to improve the business. But yet, only 13% of the companies actually, embark on Industry 4.
That's not a high percentage at all.
So,
right. What about you, Yong? What do you think? You agree there's a digital divide?
Oh yes, I think that it is quite obvious. I think that one of the big challenges for us is that how do you make digital and digitization relevant to the SME? A lot of them, they appreciate that, it can help us, it sounds good. But the thing is, where do I start? How do I go about it? And one of the confusion, I guess, from the Industry 4, terminology that we've been throwing around, a lot of the companies that say that I may not even be Industry 2, and so to get to Industry 4 seems like a big reach, and so maybe it is not something that for me for the time being.
Tiong, if I could ask you to help us clarify, I mean, the SMA sector is huge, and there must be a huge range of types of organizations, and the requirements might be quite diverse. Help us understand where it is most effective. I mean, are we looking at businesses where there's precision engineering, which requires, automation, that's the name of your organization, and then where would digitalization fit, at least in the production dimension of the work?
Okay. First, I think we have to look at the machinery equipment as a subsector, because actually it encompasses the whole value chain. All right, from those companies that are directly involved in machinery equipment manufacturing, as well as the engineering supporting industries. So although if you look at from the what they call the number of companies, SME point of view, involving in this engineering supporting industry, they are involved in even fabrication, including even machining, including maybe surface treatment of some of the materials, for example. So some of these companies, actually a lot of 85% based on our data, 85% of these companies belongs to SME.
Right.
So I think a lot of them are still very much very labor intensive, I would say, at this moment right now. I think the level of digitization is still very low. A lot of them, let's say for example, they don't even have much of a, data recording, which is
Right. Yeah, so this is what confuses me when I think about the world of engineering and precision, right? That's required, and how could it still be labor intensive? I mean, we've gone far away from the old, smith working on iron and and making widgets and stuff, right? So surely just because they are part of a supply chain and they would have had up their game in terms of the kind of work they're doing.
Yes, maybe I'll just chip in here. I think that one of the challenges with SME in particular, like Mr. Tiong mentioned, yeah, you are right. In terms of the engineering industries, the tools has actually progressed. There are many of those tools, machines and equipment. They are already automated, but they exist as an island. So what happened is that we find that some of the challenges is that, the companies are not actually maximizing on the benefit of those equipment, because what they tended to do is the data that is generated on the machine stays on the machine.
Right.
And they still rely on paper and people to go around and take down the records.
Right, because what you were referring to earlier, Industry 4.0, is all about data-driven decisions, right?
Exactly.
So if you're still kind of stuck within the machine and automation phase, you're not utilizing data to drive your decision-making process.
Exactly.
Okay, and so I also want to kind of just follow up on Sharad's question about SMEs, whether this makes sense for SMEs, whether digital adoption is something that SMEs think, well, is this really for me? Because you have to think about the cost of this and also economies of scale, right?
Yes.
Is that what you're hearing from SMEs on the ground?
Yes, very much so. In fact, when the Productivity Nexus started to engage the SME, and we found that we actually had to take a step back. Part of the thing that we need to achieve, or part of our mission, if you like, is to actually demystify, this Industry 4 or the automation, and this digitization to the SMEs. Because in fact, we use examples, if I may indulge in one of the sort of analogy that we use, sometimes we have to illustrate to them, we say that it is not so mysterious, because you used to have a car that only have a speedometer, temperature gauge, and a fuel gauge. But today, you will not think of going out without checking Waze, without checking GPS. So those are actually making use of the data and then making decision based on data. So digitization and automation, encompasses all these things. So if when you illustrate it to them that way, then there seems to say that, maybe there's something there for us, Okay. And then this is really where I think that, under the MEPN, some of the initiative that we have taken, I think that is starting to get that message across.
Okay, well, let's come back and discuss those initiatives. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll come back and discuss more on Consider This. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Consider This with me, Melissa Idris and Sharad Kuttan. We're chatting tonight to Tiong Kee Hock and Yung Kee Sin from the Machinery and Equipment Productivity Nexus of the Malaysia Productivity Corporation. Just before the break, you alluded to some of the initiatives under the MEPN, this nexus. Tell me more about this. What exactly is the Malaysian Productivity Corporation doing in terms of trying to encourage more machine and equipment productivity, Tiong?
Actually, what we have been doing, besides trying to promote this through awareness, I think one of the programs that came out after this COVID, of course, it's not the main cause of COVID, but we actually started with this virtual business advisory kind of clinic. Then from there, it actually evolved into what we call now Productivity 1010, which is actually a business virtual mentoring program, why we came about with, as I wanted to add, is that because of this gap between awareness and adoption, I think the main problem is because a lot of these SMEs do not have actually what we call the roadmap for them to actually, they do not know how. Basically, they're aware, but they do not know how. So I think this mentoring program is basically to help this through a series of virtual mentoring session, and we are trying to help this SME through step by step, helping understand what is the current situation right now, what is the area that gives them the maximum what I call financial benefits, and what is the areas that they should actually focus on in terms of business objective, and how do they benchmark against the best companies around. So with this, we have this tool that came about using what we call a self-diagnostic tool as well as a prioritization tool that will able to help them to identify at least 3 projects for them to start on. And with that, we think that will maintain the sustainability of this project that they embark on.
I want to ask you this, when I think of businesses, and what will drive change for businesses, often it's about who their clients are, who their customers are, and changing demands, right? And it's the changing demands of their customers that are actually going to have the greatest impact, not what the association says, not what politicians say, because it is bottom line for them. If they can't deliver what the customer wants, they don't have business. Is there enough pressure on that dimension pushing Malaysian SMEs to kind of step up, to digitalize, to automate, to whatever it is? Is there that kind of pressure?
Yeah, maybe I'll answer that question. I think that both the answer is that, I think that there are really 2, I would say, not category, but really 2 types of businesses. Some who are actually working to support the MNCs, the more demanding customers who are doing export. Yes, it is being driven by the customers and the customers' requirement. But we have got a large number of SME who are actually supplying to the local market, who actually built their successes maybe 20 years ago, and they're quite happy that they are able to cari makan, right. And so life goes on, And I think that really what happened during the COVID, if there is such a thing called a positive development, was that it became a catalyst, for a lot of businesses to seek help. And Mr. Tiong mentioned that, we have this virtual advisory clinic. So we found that during the MCO period, we have a lot more companies who actually came and sought help. And so that was an opportunity for us to actually go in and actually, build on that. And I think that what Mr. Tiong has mentioned in terms of the Productivity 1010 is actually one of the offshoot, from that.
Okay. So despite challenging economic times, you saw an increase in the adoption of digital technology, digitization.
We saw an increase in interest.
In interest,
to
okay,
engage,
all right.
yeah.
And is cost a factor for SMEs? Because again, it's tough economic times, and if what Shara just said, if your clients are also kind of backing away, there's no pressure on from your clients for you to innovate, for you to compete and become more, adopt digital solutions, you might say, this is an investment, I'm going to put a pin in, I'm going to put a pause in this decision. Is that what you're seeing from SMEs?
I think that again, the MNC, those SMEs supplying to the MNC and so on, just to illustrate the sort of a pressure that they're under. If they are a supplier to a particular MNCs, for example, every year they actually have to decrease their price instead of increase the price.
To remain competitive.
To remain competitive. And the client would demand that. But I think that for a lot of people who are supplying to the local companies, there is no such pressure. But with the tough times and so on, the interest definitely is more, and as Mr. Tiong mentioned, the adoption, So what we are trying to do, and through the MEPN, is that we try to actually assist them in setting the priority, and we assist them to actually embark on small projects, so that at least it makes something real for them. I think that this is really the objective.
Okay, so kind of small milestones for them to see this adoption. One of the things that, in our previous conversations with other champions of Nexus, Productivity Nexus from MPC, that they've pointed out to us that one of the reasons why SMEs hold back in digital adoption is employee skill set, is
Yes.
I guess difficulty in trying to ensure that across the organization everyone is of a certain skill set to fully utilize
That's
digitalization. Is that how would you advise SMEs to overcome that, Tiong?
I would say HRDF, under the HRDF fund, I think they have also came up with a what they call certain grant, especially under this current situation now for digitization. Company to actually utilizing the grant to actually, even those who are not even contributing to HRDF is able to use this grant to actually to upskill or reskill their employees, especially in this area. So these are grants available now.
Yeah, I wonder about SMEs as a sector. Are they attracting talent? Do they think about talent? Do they think about rewarding, talent with higher wages and stuff? Is that part of their, their organizational culture, their, business culture, which is to value talent? I mean, I can see Tiong, you're smiling there because, a lot of, traditional companies not known for that. They're not known for their focus on talent. Tiong, what do you think? Is that a big problem?
I would say, if you look at SME today in our country, I think there are different levels of this SME. All right. Of course, those who are in the who are in the industry champion, they are actually able to compete with the multinational. I think those companies they are of course they are value talent. They obviously, but I would say there are also many in the who are very small. So they are only, I think, concerned about day to day. So I think they're always very cost driven. So obviously they will go for the, a lot of time rather than productivity driven.
What do you think?
Perhaps let me chip in a little bit here. And under the MEPN, apart from this digitization type of a focus, one of the other areas that we have done is, in fact, we are focusing on 4 areas under MEPN. One of which is actually talent and talent development. And it starts from, all the way from training. It starts from our institution. Are we actually generating the sort of talent that is required? And that is actually one of the work groups under the MEPN is actually very actively working towards. So that part of it, is, yes, you are right, Sharad, because a lot of the smaller companies, they tend to say that I pay for the talent, I try to bid for the talent, rather than I groom the talent. Okay, and that has been the, I would say that the drugs that the industry has been living on. Okay, but I think
how do you wean them off it?
Yes,
how?
And you see, related with that, we also have to actually bring up the try to link productivity to profitability, and a lot of the time, the SME, their prime focus is on profitability. And productivity and everything else is just by the way. Nice to have. If we have time, we look at it. And so what happened is that under MEPN, we've been doing a lot of pushing that.
Right.
This is one of the parallel development within MEPN.
So increase productivity through digitalization and then increase profitability.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. Another quick break here on Consider This. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Consider This with me, Melissa Idris and Sharad Kuttan. Let's continue our conversation, and I want to touch a little bit on Budget 2021. So Budget 2021 saw incentives to accelerate the implementation of digitalization business. I believe there was an allocation of about 1 billion ringgit under the digital transformation scheme for the industry. You must be very pleased with this. But Tiong, I'm going to ask you, coming back to something you said, about, yes, there is awareness about the importance of digitalization, but I'm wondering, with these types of incentives given by government under budgets, is it truly reaching businesses? Are they aware that these incentives are there to reach out to and for their, to get support from?
I would say that up until now, I think those companies who have already signed up for the readiness assessment by the several agencies under MITI, for example, they have, I think, as far as I know, I think they have not many actually have gone into the what we call utilizing the intervention fund, utilizing the fund for digitalization.
Right, yes.
So they are still actually at the assessment level, I would say, at this moment right now. So that's also part of the reason why MPC, because as a different agencies looking at this right now, because they want to reach out to the small and medium industries and especially reach out to about 1,000 companies within a short time, actually awareness about this, and of course trying to help them to come up with this plan. That's why this Productivity 1010 came about. Yes. Because they know that by going through this readiness assessment and finally get them to implement it, it's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah. I wonder about this, the enterprise as a whole, right? When it seems like a really good thing to do, right? And because SMEs are so crucial to our economy, yes, their longevity, sustainability is of utmost importance to everybody's welfare. But the question really is, you know, what are the incentives for them? You know, I mean, you can talk it up, you can even provide money, but at the end of the day, what do you see as the real, you know, the headwinds or the inertia? Is there inertia in the SME community to actually adopt these things? And if that's the case, should there be a different approach? I mean, should we just keep banging on that door, or should we decide that this is actually not a winning strategy?
Maybe I will just illustrate these things a little bit in terms of some of the program that we are undertaking in MEPN. Okay, we decided that with the limited resources, we cannot go and boil the ocean. Okay. You know, we decided that we need to have small win that is actually real, that can actually bring some, you know, tangible sort of examples. And so that is actually the philosophical approach, if you like.
Right.
So what we have done is, as Mr. Tiong has mentioned, you know, that the government has actually put up a lot of incentive for people to do the readiness assessment. But the question is, after you've done the readiness assessment,
what's next?
What's next? And that actually is one of the missing link. Okay. And so under MEPN, what we try to do, and Mr. Tiong mentioned the digital, the Productivity 1010, and we actually go there and identify what are some of the burning issue, what are some of the things that are low-hanging fruits that can bring some tangible changes, you know, and that is actually what is under the Productivity 1010 sort of emphasis. And together with other work groups within, you know, there are 4 work groups within MEPN, okay? And so what happened is that we go in and try to and link with them and say that technology adoption, innovation, you know, and also making changes to your processes is part and parcel of the overall, you know, equation. And dovetail this in with the, you know, the automation and so on, then you'll bring some results. So I think that to answer your question, you know, that is actually what we are working towards as a deliverable, so that at least we can then say that now we can show you that there are some tangible, you know, benefits that you can see for yourself.
All right, I quite like this approach of small wins. Then you see how digital adoption can actually improve your processes, improve your data decision making, and I think that's one way to get SMEs to come on board.
I'd love to see the ocean boil, though. That's something I'm looking forward to.
That is something that, you know, with climate change, who knows? Yes, well, gentlemen, thank you both for being on the show tonight. We really appreciate your time and you sharing your insights with us.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That's all we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris.
And I'm Sharad Kuttan, signing off the evening.
Thank you so much for watching, and good night.
Thank you.